If I'm really honest and I could go back in time, I probably wouldn't go to university. Sorry for any kids that are watching and your parents see this. No, joking.
I don't know the quality of your relationships. It's a little bit like being on a sugar trip. Once you have that first piece of chocolate, you want the next piece of chocolate, and then the whole block of chocolate.
If you like half-assed wanting to do it, then just don't bother.
In my ebook, when I was working on it, there's a chapter on actually like creating your own schedule and habits, and it goes through, okay, how much time do you have? I made like this whole design of it. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a very special guest on the channel, and I'm doing an interview with the one, the only.
La Ferpection.
Oui, oh my god, the French accent gets me every time. So, La Ferpection, their YouTube channel and the links and everything will be in my description box below, so make sure to check them out. And we're gonna get started. We want to know, who are you and who are you to tell us about the languages and your expertise in language learning.
Okay, so I'm La Ferpection, or my actual name is Ed. Obviously, La Ferpection would be a strange name for my parents to choose.
Surname?
Yeah, there we
Perfection.
Go. Perfection. No, but basically, so yeah, my name's Ed. I am English, and I then started learning languages when I was young because I like them. It's a bit weird, maybe that way. So I learned French and German at school and university. Then afterwards, I learned Spanish. I then moved to Brazil in basically the middle of nowhere.
Brazil! Brazil! Eu sei olá brasileiros, tudo bem com vocês?
Tudo bem?
Tudo bem? Wow, I love the accent, your accent is very good. Okay, so tell me, so you studied, I studied French and German at university.
Right.
You studied French and German at university.
Yeah.
What were your experiences like? Like, how did you find the system?
If I'm really honest and I could go back in time, I probably wouldn't go to university. Which I know is probably not what sorry for any kids that are watching and your parents see this, but
we're all about the truth though. We're saving you time,
yeah,
money in many cases.
Yeah, I think definitely universities, we mentioned this,
yeah.
Basically if you think about a university course, they often don't explain this, you would have one speaking lesson per week. So if you actually think about that, you're spending 1 hour a week practicing basically what everyone wants to do, which is be able to speak, understand people, and you speak and, you know, just generally like connect with the people in the country, right?
Exactly. And that's something, it's really interesting. When you ask anyone learning a language, what is your goal? Usually you will find everyone has the same kind of 3 goals. To be able to understand native speakers, to speak fluently, practice their confidence, like, you know, increase their confidence in speaking. And all of those things, like the top goals, always has to do with communication. And yet you see the school systems very often focus on everything but the speaking.
Yeah.
I mean, you have listening comprehensions here and there. I don't know how your classes were structured, but for French, like we had a one lesson, it was usually on a Monday, just focused on listening, but it was also phonetics. Like, can you differentiate the E sound from the E sound, or like different E's? Which is great, but if you don't have the opportunity to actually use that and implement that in a conversation with someone, it just goes to waste.
Yeah. Well, as you said, you have to work out the end goal. So, is your end goal to sit in your room and pronounce French sounds, or sit in your room and go through grammar exercises? Probably not.
I was about to say, você говорит по-русски. This is my life now. Почему ты хотел изучать русский язык?
Не говорю по-русски. Я understand a very little bit. Я понимаю, like very, but I started like 2 weeks ago.
Wow. That's great.
But yeah, literally, I got some basic materials. So just like, you know, what are the top 10 words I might need to know. Kind of merge them together, and then I went straight on italki and just started speaking. So trying to, like, listening to Russian music, watching Russian films, just literally, I understand like very, very little. I just pick out small words, but it's kind of just building this relationship with the language to be like, oh, I like that series, I like that song, and they're things that stick in your mind a lot more than just like. For me anyway, I think for you as well.
100%, and that's something, honestly, guys watching, and you guys probably have the same issue where, like, I find a lot of people often, if they're learning a language on their own, they're kind of like, well, I don't really have a plan. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. Like, the number of forums you see with, okay, what's the best resource to start with? And I think the fact of having a relationship with a language is so important, because I mean, at the end of the day, if you compare it to an actual relationship, like a real life relationship with a partner or someone that you have a crush on and you really like, when you like, you know, it's not something that develops kind of like the best relationships don't develop just in the sense of we're just gonna start reading some books together, discuss some really intense topics and, you know, like really boring topics, and it's gonna be I don't know the quality of your relationships, but you know what I mean. And then like it starts with passion most of the time, or it starts with an interest, and it develops, and you want to spend more time, and you don't really have this idea of how much time passes when you're with that person. I think the same thing is with a language. Like when you're doing something that you're interested in, with music, you know, you're listening to the music in the language when you're on the train, when you're on the bus, when you're walking, or you're watching movies, or sharing it with friends as well. It doesn't feel like learning, and that's often what keeps people going with the language, because it doesn't feel like work. It's an interest, it's a passion that develops.
So I think it's kind of better, like jump on what you said. Is I remember specifically, I used to skip class at university.
Rebel.
You can see that I'm a bit of a bad boy.
But, you gotta cover up your tattoos, Ed.
There you go, the hood and everything. But I used to skip school, but I used to skip class because they would just be going over stuff that I was like, I can learn this on my own from a film.
Yeah.
And I actually find that, I'm not saying you should go and binge on Netflix, but which is actually what I do.
Exactly. And I made a video not too long ago about how to learn with Netflix and how I've always learned with Netflix. And I mean, it doesn't have to just be Netflix, but you know, also any TV series or just kind of visual material. That can be a lot more effective than spending an hour in class not really doing anything useful or productive.
I find also for the maintenance of the language, so basically, rather than like, you know, you maybe learn stuff at school, to actually then continue that connection with the language when you're, like for example, if I want to practice my French, I just stick on a series that I like.
Me too. And that's something you will always find with polyglots, or just people who, you know, take language learning kind of seriously, or who speak many languages, or who are successful in having learned a language. It's a part of their life. It's a part of their life. And same thing, like I went to Paris last week and I just started watching this French series, kind of binged on it. I can't remember what it was called, but it was about this girl who like was kind of trying to get over like some guy. Anyway, so yeah, and she fell in love with a guy who was a gigolo, I think, or like, you know, someone who's like an escort, essentially. Yeah, that's kind of what the series is based around. But it's so good, and I picked up a lot of slang, because that was my issue, for example. And I mean, you can comment on this in your experience, but I found particularly when you reach like a B1, B2 stage, a lot of people feel like, okay, I'm not really clicking with the native speakers because I've never learned the like real slang. What I do, to be honest, I actually learned kind of the colloquialisms very early on. In a language, because it's language hacking here, like, because it makes you fit in a lot quicker, and then if you're missing a word, but you can be like, gente, isso é muito legal, você sabe, like, if you know those key phrases that always come up, it gives you a lot more comfort to speak.
But I actually think that's more important than grammar and stuff. So if somebody in Brazil, for example, would say, oh, it's like, legal, and like whatever, you know, entendeu, you know.
Entendeu? See? Didn't understand half the sentence. I'm gonna pretend I did. Hacked the language.
But like that's much more, in my opinion, much more important. Like creating that connection, and it's a lot more fun as well. Like it's a lot more fun to learn slang words and fun like expressions and that sort of stuff, as opposed to like really concentrating on, because I'm gonna do it in like passer simple. You know,
oh my god, let's not even start on French grammar. Let's not even start.
Right, okay.
The subjunctif passé. This just reminds me of my French school days, like French at university. But yeah, so what do you do now actually? You know, how do you involve languages into your life? You also work with languages and with your channel, so tell us more about that.
So yeah, with my channel, it's essentially we take language subjects that might not always be the most exciting things, and similar to your channel, turn it into something understandable in an easy way, and make it, well, we try and make it fun. I hope it's fun. And yeah, in terms of languages in my actual life, and I think that's a huge part, is that you have to make it part of your everyday life.
Yes, for sure.
Because otherwise, if you are trying to just, okay, right, I'm just going to sit down and read a book for 10 minutes a day, it's never going to like really become ingrained. So yeah, so for example, I moved specifically to Paris to work in multiple languages. So I was previously working in sales, and I was using like English, French, German, Spanish, a bit of Portuguese on a daily basis. So French with my colleagues, and then the other languages with clients. And I also have the luxury of having a Spanish girlfriend. So
love is always,
you know.
always a good way to go about practicing languages, for sure.
There you go. So
sure.
you know, that is probably the best way to learn a language.
It is, guys. Even if, little secret tip here, even if you go on dates, just on dates with people, there's your language practice for the day.
There you go.
You're catching up with a cute guy or cute girl. I mean, if you're not taken, you know.
Yeah.
People, you know.
But so basically, the best language app is Tinder.
Actually, I feel like this would be such a good video idea. Basically, this was 3 weeks into me learning Swedish. I started talking to a guy who was from Sweden.
Okay.
And I just messaged him in Swedish because, you know, that's what I do with any language. And he replied in Swedish. I used Google Translate, and I replied in Swedish. And I think, how long can I keep up this idea of him believing that I can speak fluent Swedish? I feel like that would be a great idea.
How long did you? Oh, is it still?
It's still going. It's still going.
Okay.
How long could I keep it up?
Can you speak fluent
No,
Swedish? Okay.
but I can write in Swedish using Google Translate.
I would assume probably the date point when he speaks to you, you're like.
That's where the hacking comes in. I'll just be like, hur är läget? Bra. Yeah. And then just keep going. No, of course I wouldn't be like that. Like I just think it would be a funny video idea.
I think so.
But anyway. But yeah, also just finding even posts on Facebook or people that post in different languages or on Instagram. Like that's how I also pick up a lot of my kind of slang in different languages, is by reading YouTube comments, by reading comments on other people's Instagrams. Especially when it's easy to follow international people.
Yeah. But I think that's. It seems like you do very similar to myself in that if I'm so listen, like Dutch is the last language I learned and can actually speak. So from morning till night, I would wake up and I would literally live in Dutch as much as I could.
Yes.
So while being in France, so I would wake up, I'd watch Dutch YouTubers, I would read Dutch stuff, I would talk to myself in Dutch, because I'm strange.
I do that too. You're not weird.
Yeah.
It's fine.
But I mean, I would literally try and live like a Dutch person, obviously making mistakes and stuff.
Yeah.
But to literally just try and ingrain it in my life as much as possible, because otherwise, it's something that you maybe look at for 10 minutes a day, you forget about it, and it doesn't become part of your routine. Right?
Genau. Jesus, genau. Exactly. Anyway. But yeah, even through having my friend in Portuguese, and like I'm lucky enough, you know, I have a group of friends who are all Brazilian, and I go dancing with them every Wednesday. Okay. So I'm the only like gringa in the group, but like obviously like they know I can understand them.
Okay.
And when I want to say something, I have a friend who I speak in German with. If I'm like, oh hey Lina, actually, ich weiß nicht, wie ich das sagen soll. Wie sagt man das auf Portugiesisch? That's actually how I learn the best. I've always learned the best in social situations, where it's almost like, it's almost as though you were in the country, but you're not. You don't have to travel. You just attend the events or meet the people that you want to meet to help you in reaching that goal. So I mean, it just started with me becoming friends with a girl from Brazil, and then she invited me to some events, and it just happened that all of her friends were Brazilian, so I kind of had to learn to fit in. If that makes sense. And it's still like an ongoing process.
I think that's a huge. So for example, as well, when you moved here, right? Did you immediately try? Did you just really try and like find German friends? So do you like almost remove yourself from like the expats and the Australians and that sort of stuff?
Now, like not in Berlin, but when I moved to Germany, I went with the goal, and I said this in my previous video, so go check that out, guys, where I talk about like how I mastered German essentially. So I kind of made it the goal of when I'm on my year of exchange, I'm not going to hang around with international students. So I purposely moved into a WG, like an apartment share house, with just Germans. and therefore I became friends with their friends. I also had German subjects, so I like purposely did half my law subjects in German, like 70% of them, so that I was in a classroom with other German students, so I had to learn it. What about you? Tell me, like, so you live between Amsterdam and Paris?
So essentially my girlfriend lives in Amsterdam and I'm based in Paris, so it's kind of like a...
Long distance?
Well, not really, because I end up spending quite a lot of time in Amsterdam. But,
mid-distance.
Yeah, mid-distance. That's one massive piece of advice, is that if you are living abroad, for example, and trying to learn a language, is that, so I'll take in like lots of situations that I've seen people where there are real issues when they first arrive. Your natural instinct is, right, okay, I need to find friends now, so I'm going to find friends that speak my language and we have the same things in common, right? And this is going to be the easiest way to do it. And I think you have to like spend a little bit of time. It's like quite a hard time of like, I am going to separate myself from like this expat, particularly being us like English native language, to separate from that bubble and be like, right, I'm going to really put the effort in to like try and find people that speak German. They don't have to be German, but people that are going to speak German, like really make that effort. I think that's a huge like difference between people that make it and people that don't.
Yeah, and the other thing, I know it can be a scary thing for people as well, because they think, oh my gosh, I'm not going to know how to, say particular things, or they're not going to understand me, but they're going to be so understanding. I think this is where like tandems work really well as well. Like my Brazilian friend, we started off as a tandem because I had an interest in learning Portuguese. I was an absolute beginner. Like the only word I could say was oi and legal. Those were the two. And she wanted to learn German, and we just started like that, and it just developed. And you find those people, and tandem groups are everywhere. Like you even have a tandem app, and like Hello Talk as well, that you can use. And at the end of the day, friendships, like in this day and age, have most of the time very little to do with language. Now, my interest in learning certain languages, like Portuguese and German actually, and as well with Swedish, were all sparked because of the people that I met. And it was their native language. I was like, oh my god, like I want to know more about this person and this friendship group that I have in this friendship, that I want to learn the language. Yeah,
but I think that's also a real, like if you're learning a language for that reason, I think that's a very good reason. It's something you're going to follow through with.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're sort of, New Year's resolution, like, right, okay, I'm going to learn Italian.
Exactly. Why? Yeah, one thing I always ask people is, what is your why? And sometimes you need to reconsider your why, because just like you will never be successful if someone just tells you, go and learn this language. Or a lot of people, we as humans, like when we're told to do something, very often we'll be rebellious, and we will, particularly for that reason, that because someone told us to do it, we're not going to go and do it. We're not going to put in effort unless we have a personal reason to do it.
So, in terms of your students, is that when you say change or redefine your why, how can they do that?
Well, I have a student who moved to Berlin, and he lived in Berlin for about 2 years. Never really spoke German because he didn't see the need. And I said, well, what are your goals in life actually? Like, what are your business goals? Why did you move to Berlin? He's like, well, I love the city and I want to live here. And I said, okay, so you have a long-term plan for staying in Berlin? And he said, yes. And I said, well, what are the types of things that you've had to deal with, that you've struggled with? And for him it was like banks, dealing with people, dealing in business. So he has business goals here in Berlin. And with time it did come a little bit with having to have certain experiences that he had, like difficulties in dealing with insurances and things like that. But he realized, okay, you know what, I have a business reason to learn this, because if I want to succeed in my business, I need to speak this language. And that gave him the incentive. For other people, it's personal incentives, like personal reasons, like a relationship or a friendship. So it's about asking the right questions and getting them to think, or kind of to envision, where could I be if I could speak this language?
Okay. Can I also, did that student, did he start by learning the situations that you couldn't solve? If that makes sense. So say, for example, when you said, what are the situations that you found difficult? Like when I'm in the bank, did he start, or did you start by learning that vocab and that stuff, or was it just like, right, I now know why I need to learn German, so
well, for some
get
people,
my arse in gear.
Yeah, we did actually. Like, I think we started off with everyday situations because those were the most common ones, and then it came to, obviously, topics like that are very advanced. So I think it's important to learn the kind of, I'm going to say the 20% of vocabulary, whatever, or phrases that's going to get you, 80% of the results. so he doesn't have to know every single adjective for how to describe a contract, but he needs to know how to ask certain questions like, what does this mean?
So teuer.
Es ist zu teuer, genau. Es ist zu teuer, es ist zu billig, ich verstehe das nicht. Können Sie das wiederholen? And those types of things you can also put anywhere. When you go to the shop and say, nein, this is zu teuer, danke. Stuff like that. But how did you get interested in all of the languages that you speak?
Exactly. So I'm just copying what you're saying, really.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. No, but I think we have a very similar philosophy, which is quite nice. But I speak 6, as in like fluently speak 6, and I'm learning my 7th language. And I've actually studied a lot more languages. So I studied bits of like Chinese, Indonesian, and all this sort of stuff. But then I literally just did it for a bit of fun, and I knew when I started, I was like, I'm literally just learning this to understand a bit about the culture.
Yeah.
But the ones where I really like gone for it and really carried through is something where I had a real connection with the culture, like Brazil, for example.
Yeah.
I was like, at one point, pro Brazil.
Sim, eu também curto o Brasil.
I love the music, I love the films, I love everything about Brazil. I was like, I'm going to Brazil and I'm going to learn Portuguese. So it's a real strong like connection that maybe then like I was never going to not learn it.
Exactly.
Like,
I always feel like it's a little bit like being on a sugar trip. Once you have that first piece of chocolate, you want the next piece of chocolate, and then the whole block of chocolate. And it's a little bit like that. Once you've had a bit of a taste and you're like, wow, I love this, you want to just know more and more and expand on that. So that's what you need to get on.
It's good and bad, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Priorities.
Yeah, where do you stop, I suppose.
Yeah. But anyway, so what would you say, what do you want to leave our busy linguists with as a final kind of piece of advice or tips, or just something really, one thing that you found out that you wish you had maybe found out sooner about language learning or your channel or anything?
I'm going to take it from Russian, which is the most recent language I've learned, and I think it's been a lot more challenging than Dutch because I have no base in that language, right? Is that you really have to commit to it. Set yourself firstly set yourself a goal, work out your why, but then really be like, okay, this is my schedule, and like properly go for it. If you either go for it or don't, like, because if you like half-ass wanting to do it, then just don't bother. Like,
exactly.
I know it sounds bad.
I know.
Write down that goal of, right, I'm going to do this amount of time per day. This is what I've done with Russian. And then I think the most important bit, which we talked about a lot, is like find that connection.
Yeah.
What series, what music is it, what book is it, what game is it, like what, italki teacher is it that I find really friendly and I want to learn more about.
For sure.
So make it like personal to you, otherwise it's just like some abstract thing.
Exactly.
That makes no sense.
Exactly. In my ebook, when I was working on it, at the end of each chapter there are literally like action questions, like for example, there's a chapter on actually like creating your own schedule and habits, and it goes through, okay, how much time do you have? I made like this whole design of like, okay, are you like summertime Sally who's like on holiday and has like hours a day, or are you like busy little Betty who doesn't have much time? But it's kind of, and then it asks you the questions, okay, what do you enjoy doing the most, and kind of prioritizing stuff like that. So the link to that is down below, guys, check it out. But yeah, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, and I hope you guys found Ed's story valuable. There were a lot of really interesting things in there, actually. Clique na minha cara para escrever no meu canal.
E a minha cara o quê?
Minha cara. É essas caras, gente. No, and I will see you next time.